Welcome to ZBook's Successful Authors Podcast. And today I have with me a guy that I've been following since 2015 when I got started. And he is one of the top entrepreneurs and authors in the world. He's got the #1 blog for marketing for authors, the #1 podcast for marketing for authors, and he's got the #1 tool for authors, period, in the world. Welcome back to the show, Dave Chesson.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
How you been?
Not too bad, living the dream, dreaming to live.
Yeah, how's civilian life treating you?
It's been really good. I thoroughly enjoy it.
Are you still waking up at 4 in the morning or something?
5 now, so sleeping in.
Yeah, but I was going to ask you about that because you have one killer schedule, and you were, I think you were a successful officer, a very interesting job description you had. Yeah, when you get out of the of officer as an officer in the military, don't they have something called instant recall? In a time of war, they can always call you back.
They could. Yeah, I don't know when that time period goes out, but I'm sure business won't be good if they need to recall me for war.
Yeah, yeah. So, so tell us about. It's been what, a year now? How's the transition? Any interesting things, or just?
No, just kids getting older, and it's just been really good being home. Definitely love that aspect of it all. And
so now you're dedicating all your time to books and your platform.
Yep, and going to dance recitals and softball games.
Yeah, Mr. Taxi, man.
That's right.
That's the problem with all those extracurricular activities. But well, that's great. True. So now you're a full-time author, entrepreneur, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. That's the dream, man. That's what we're all working for. So, or working to. And so, #1 question I get from my readers and subscribers is, how do you use Publisher Rocket for fiction books? So for nonfiction, it's always, just type in how to, and find a need and etc. So what's the #1 way to use it for fiction?
When it comes to fiction, shoppers go to Amazon and they try to describe the book that they're looking for, okay? And most of the time, most shoppers, especially if they're not hardcore fiction, we're talking like hardcore fiction readers that read like 4 or 5 books a month at least. Usually they're not that, and they don't exactly know what they're looking for. So they'll start with something very vague. Like, say, for example, they'll type in like science fiction. Right. Amazon's not going to be able to provide them with the perfect science fiction just off of that word. So then the person's like, all right, science fiction, alien invasion. Oh, okay, it's getting closer, and then they'll be like science fiction, alien invasion, Earth war. Notice that we're starting to kind of break down to the point that the story's getting there, okay, that we can understand what the story's about. And that's kind of a very large scale way of looking at how fiction shoppers shop. So way that authors can really start to develop an understanding of what those weird terms are is that I tell them that you should break out a piece of paper and you should look at
paper.
For idea generation. You break out the paper and you kind of create like 4 columns, okay? And the title of one column is genre, okay? Ways to describe your genre. Another one is character roles and kind of like any special things about a character. Another is time settings, time periods and settings.
Okay.
And finally, the last one's like the catalyst, what starts the story. Okay. So let's go back through those. Okay. The first one is, we'll just go with time periods and settings, right? Time periods and settings. Is it a Western? Is it a, pirate, time period, the Caribbean? What location? What words can we describe the location and the time? And this is interesting because a lot of people say, well, there's no such, like, my time is like 1870 or something like that. There's no time period, or word that represents that except for 1870. And you'll be like, well, actually, there's one called gas lamp. So yeah, there is. I mean, there are some really crazy cool terms that give you an idea of what time period or location. And if you choose Gaslamp, you're talking like, you know, England or some kind of downtown, you know, metropolis of the 1870s. So start generating those ideas and really start thinking outside the box. Maybe even use a synonym generator or something that kind of helps you discover terms like Gaslamp. All right, the next one is character roles and types, okay? Character roles and types are like ways that you can describe the character. Like, are they a mutant? Are they alpha male? Are they, you know, an Amish girl, Amish teenager? Like, what words do you describe your protagonist and sometimes even the antagonist, if that's the kind of story? You know, and those words again really break down the story. The next is like catalyst, you know, like what sends our hero on their journey. Okay, what starts the whole romance? You know, what situation was the lady in before she found Mr. Right? You know, was it apocalyptic? Was it zombie? Was it disease apocalyptic? Like, what kicked it off? Okay. And again, that might not be what this movie is about, but it is the background that is more than just a post-apocalyptic. It's a disease post-apocalyptic, you know. And then, and finally, you know, there's ways of describing the genre. Now, a lot of people will say like romance. Well, no. There's like 50 shades of romance out there. Okay, you've got like wholesome, you've got Christian, you've got steamy, you've got, you know, conservative, you've got family, you've got all different types. So describe your niche genre in there. And when you have those 4 giant columns, you can then start to really analyze. Using a program like Publisher Rocket, my program, you can start feeding those words and descriptive phrases into Rocket and seeing if that is a good fit. Are people buying books that show up for that? Are people actually typing in those phrases? And then you can start to combine them. And you'll start to see really powerful results. Like, for example, I was working with a lady who was writing a book and her like target keywords were like second chance romance, which, okay, good. She got the genre, right? One of the 4 that we talked about. But then we started adding things like the time period, which for her was Victorian era. And then we started adding things like looking into, you know, the situation that this woman was in. And turns out, you know, that the woman had a baby. So here is a woman, you know, who has child. Notice that that's a completely different story, right? We know it's kind of wholesome. It's Victorian age. It's, you know, the type is second chance romance and it's with child. The phrase that we found was Victorian second chance romance with baby. Right? That, what is that? 5 words, 6 words or so?
Yeah. That's one keyword, right?
That's one phrase. That's right. One phrase that you can target. And here's the thing is that there were lots of people searching for exactly that. Really? Because what happens is that people were thinking that they love Victorian romance and they love second chance romance, which I didn't know at the time, but second chance romance is where you had love, you lost the love somehow, like either the guy died or went off to war or whatever, and then you find love again. So it's like the second chance. Not exactly divorce. Usually second chance is like centered around some tragedy, or the guy's just a jackwagon and he's abusive and leaves or gets arrested or murdered, whatever.
Can we back up a bit? Sorry. Can we back up a bit? Because how did you find that one big, huge phrase with KDP Rocket or Publisher Rocket?
Well, just like we talked about, we broke down the 4, we broke out a pen and paper, we wrote down all these descriptive phrases for time period, genre style, character
but you put
roles.
That all in KDP Rocket, the one big phrase?
Yep. We started combining them. We started putting this next to that and so forth. And we saw that that was a really great phrase that explained the story and had searches and purchases. And what's even more so is it's a perfect fit to that person's exact book. So in this case, what we learned was that the shopper, and it makes sense if you think about it, right? The shopper's thinking Victorian, then they think second chance romance. But then at the last moment, they realize that they don't want this just to be that. Like, can it be about a woman with her child? Like, you know, and society's looking down on her, but Mr. Right is looking and saying, hey, what's happening? You know? And so right there is how she was able to discover her keyword. And we were able to build out a whole bunch of others, pairing up those words and phrases that we built using the checklist.
That's interesting. I didn't know you could put that many keywords in one search term in I got to get used to saying Publisher Rocket. You know?
Yeah. Well, you can fit 50 characters inside of one keyword phrase. And so you get 7. And the way that I tell people is that, look, if you use Rocket and you see that this particular phrase is perfect, Okay. Like it is a great representation of your book. It's got good numbers and it looks good. Then just put that one phrase in there. You don't need to stuff it with everything else. Like just
Yeah.
make it that core one. But then if you've done that after and you finally have like, okay, I found my perfect ones and you still have some left, then take some of those words that we had in there and put them together and fill up your 50, because it will help to bolster the idea of what kind of time period this is and what kind of romance this is and what kind of character arch this is and all of those things. And it just helps to Amazon to index your book in the right other keywords that you might not have mentioned.
Yeah. I don't remember. It's been a while, but is this also part of your free course?
No, but we've got a whole bunch of content about it. And also anybody who purchases Rocket, they have access to the tutorial videos. And we go really in depth in basically we have the tutorial videos on the left, which is step-by-step how to use each feature. And then to the right, we have like important videos and extra information. So like say, for example, you're like, I kind of know keywords, but I don't really understand what to do with them or how do I rank better for them. We've got like that in links to the perfect information for them right there so that they can really grow their knowledge.
Cool. Yeah. So where is that again?
That's at publisherrocket.com/tutorials.
Oh, okay. Excellent. I got to get back there because I've just been using the tool like crazy and I forgot, that you're doing the tutorials also. Awesome.
Yeah, no worries. We try to make the program as intuitive possible so that, one doesn't actually have to go to the tutorials. But we definitely have those other pieces of information there just in case somebody needs to grow or nurture some of their knowledge on it.
Well, I love it. I think I told you already. I had this one book in my back pocket, which had been on a blog for a long time, and I never thought of publishing it. And then I used your tool, the Rocket, and it showed me there was a need for the book in Amazon. And so I put it up there, and then I did some Amazon ads, and long story short, $1,200 in sales, not royalties, and so, yeah, thanks, Dave. I wasn't even going to publish the book. Yeah.
Boom. Nice.
Yeah. Excellent. So it saved me some time and was awesome. So did you see, okay, just to summarize again, because I forgot or didn't know this, you can put like a huge character string in the search field of Rocket.
You can.
Okay. I'm going to see, I didn't do that yet. Man, I've only been using half the tool. Okay. Have you seen this this new tab called Advertising Reports in the AMS dashboard, where you can go and download all of this data, and it shows you the exact search terms that people input in Amazon to find your book?
Yep.
And are you using that? Would you update your keywords according to that data?
I would definitely use that information for sure. I mean, the more you can understand about what's driving people to, just to find your book, the better. And look at those terms and ask yourself, what were they thinking when they typed that in there? A while ago, we were doing advertisement for Pat Flynn's first book, Will It Fly? And the key was that we found out that Ivanka Trump actually ended up being his #1 keyword that was bringing in the most sales.
I heard about that. That's crazy. Where does that come from?
Well, and so we thought about it, and I think what ended up happening was that his book was about like testing your business idea, seeing if your business idea will fly. And a lot of people who might be typing in Ivanka Trump, and I'm not getting political here, but some people may look up to her as a business figure, as an entrepreneur, or having entrepreneurial family or something of that magnitude. And therefore, as they were looking for books on her, perhaps that they saw like their true desire was that they wanted to start a business, and they saw his book and immediately they clicked on it and it converted. People bought it. They loved his approach.
Awesome.
That's as far as we can do. Like we're trying to think to ourselves, like what caused them to do this, but it gives us an understanding that for his book, it became very important for us to start marketing his book to other entrepreneur names or wives or tertiary people that are connected to big entrepreneurs. And through that campaign, we saw a lot of success because it made sense. If you were looking up other entrepreneurs, you're probably one yourself, and you probably have that question, will my business idea succeed?
That's why I keep telling my intermediate subscribers and authors that you got to get a tool like KDP Rocket, Publisher Rocket, because you can't see that. You know, you're not going to discover that on your own. You know, so you got to get the tools to do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So a little tangent here. It's not on the question sheet. Keywords. How often do you update your 7 keywords that each book can have in the dashboard?
Well, that really depends on a lot of things. I mean, the first thing is that when I first load up a book, you never know what keyword phrase is going to be the top one. So I put in my 7, and I'll do my research, and I know that these 7 are very strong, and they will bring a lot of traffic, but sometimes they just don't resonate with the people, or the competition was too great, and I'm not showing up for the keyword. So what I'll do is that I'll have the 7, and I'll choose 2 at a time, and I'll basically like save the 2 somewhere else, and then put in another 2, right? A different 2.
Yeah.
And then I'll hit publish, and I'll give it a couple of days and see what happens. Because all of a sudden what I could see is I could see my sales increase, or I might see my sales decrease. And if I see them decrease, I'll put the original 2 back in, and I'll change a different 2. And so this way it allows me to kind of keep going until I feel like I've hit my perfect balance where, I've got, the highest amount, the optimized amount of sales. So that could be, maybe I nail it within the first couple of weeks, or, maybe it takes me a couple of months, but over time I'll start to find it. And then at that point, I'm kind of monitoring my sales and monitoring what's going on. And if I start to see the sales dip, I might change a couple of keywords, or go and, roll up the sleeves a bit and do a little bit more marketing just to revive the book up again. But that's my approach.
Yeah, cool. So, however, how do you discern between, when you're doing Amazon ads and when it's just organic? So, because when you're doing Amazon ads, those 7 keywords in your dashboard don't have much influence over the ads, do they?
Well, sort of. So the key is that what I've seen, and I've been doing a lot of testing, and I'll be coming out with I'm speaking at NINC, and I'm going to be showing all my test findings here. But a key thing is that
What's
I found.
Sorry, what?
NINC.
Yeah.
NINC.
Which one was that?
It's a fiction authors
Okay.
conference, and you have to have published 3 books and sold $50,000 worth in order to go to it. So they're like uber nerds in the marketing. So I get to kind of roll up the data nerd sleeves. But the thing is what we found is that Amazon's algorithm, they want to show popular and selling books, right? The whole purpose of their algorithm is if somebody types something in, they want to provide the book right at the top that has what they think has the highest chance of selling. Well, there are a couple ways of convincing the algorithm you should get that. Number one is that, if somebody types that in that keyword and they find your book and they click it and purchase it, then they just send a direct signal to Amazon that was the book that they were looking for when they went shopping. Another way, though, is just showing that, hey, you definitely deserve to be in those results, but also that you're selling well on other keywords. So you have a higher chance of selling if they show you more. And what we've learned is that whole selling on other keywords, I don't think Amazon says, oh, but these sales were from Amazon ads, so we're not going to count that. What I'm seeing is that when my Amazon ads are selling more books, right, I end up being indexed for even more category or for even more keywords. So my book starts showing up more on Amazon searches naturally. So therefore, it's from the Amazon ads, it just the pumping up of more sales causes all my rankings to kind of show up more. And that's why a lot of authors, when they first launch their book, they do this giant launch and they got all this fervor and people purchasing it. And then they see these high sales. And a lot of that's, it's because their book is just showing up more on Amazon. But then as all of that momentum starts to die, it's not as live and it starts to not show up as much. And therefore it stops selling as much. And it just starts to kind of
Yeah. We all know that. The post-launch depression there.
Yeah, I call it the honeymoon effect. It's after the honeymoon.
Yeah, that sounds better for sure. So, okay, now that we're in Amazon ads, I mean, everybody's complaining and why, they don't work anymore. They're less effective. So Have they changed, or has the A9 algorithm changed lately?
I think that I can't really say for sure like what Amazon's AMS is doing. I haven't seen a drop. I have seen certain people say that there's a drop, but here's the thing: for the past year and a half, there's what ends up happening is that there are a lot of authors out there that will have a drop happen, and they turn to to Facebook and they say, "Oh, I saw a drop," and somebody else says, "I saw a drop too." But we never know why it dropped. Like sometimes it's because the person hasn't even updated their ads in a while. Like they haven't added new keywords,
Yeah.
that this is an old campaign and it finally, dropped, and they don't realize that they got to keep them up.
Yeah.
So we never know whether or not the trend that people are claiming on social media is either driven by Amazon or just driven by, not knowing or not having had lots of years of experience. What would definitely start to make me have pause is if I saw people who had been crushing it for a long time on ads all of a sudden drop. I did see one person in particular that had been just crushing it on ads, and then all of a sudden they dropped from like $10,000 in ad sales a month to like $2,000.
Wow. That hurts.
Yeah, and that's definitely a hurt for sure. But that person, again, like that one was one of those where I was like, huh, yeah, that's interesting. But I'm not so sure yet. I just haven't seen enough to make me feel like something crazy has happened. And I also know that it's in Amazon's best interest that people make money from ads, because if they're not, then they're not going to use it. And if they don't use it, Amazon doesn't get paid.
Yeah, don't they have a blog for the A9 algorithm, or do you get some kind of insider insights because of the software?
Well, so yeah, they have a website called a9.com. And it's just basically like a big company page that kind of gives you the 411 on who they are.
So no
and
useful information there, huh?
I don't know. There's one piece of information I like to point to. A lot of people say that, Amazon doesn't index the book description, that therefore it doesn't matter. Don't put keywords in there or whatever. But if you go to a9.com, it flat out says, yeah, of course we index the book description and all product descriptions. That's the first thing we do,
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right, well, there you go. That answers that question. And I could go into a whole podcast episode on why I think, or how I think Amazon goes about it, because it's not as direct. A lot of people say, oh, if I copy and paste a whole sentence of my book description into Amazon search, you can't find my book, therefore it doesn't work. Or, oh, I put some gobbledygook in my book description, some like crazy code, and then I copy and paste it into Amazon, it doesn't show up. I don't think that's how it works. But again, I could go on for that for a long time for something else. But the point though is I have gotten some straight from the horse's mouth information from a9.com. So it is fun to spend like 30 minutes there just reading up on their verbiage, and give you some pretty good details there. Not all of it.
I thought you could pull some of your big gun levers and talk to some insiders there, or because, if you're a product owner and you have their access to their API, then I thought that they would have some, internal newsletter to creators about their A9 or something.
But no, definitely not. I know some people that work in there, and I've talked to them informally about some stuff, but nothing where I've got like the inside scoop.
Yeah, that's top secret stuff, huh?
Well, a lot of it's just operating the software, understanding their API, having been in this game for so long and watching all the dynamic changes that Amazon's made, one can start to speculate where they're going next because of having spent so many years responding to what they've done.
Yeah. Yeah. So one more tangential question. I just interviewed Brian Meeks, and it's my favorite question. When do you notice, so I think my genre is pretty small with the children's books, children's leadership books. When do you notice the law of diminishing returns or audience exhaustion? And how often do you recommend to refresh your keywords?
Well, a lot of that comes down to how you're ranking for them. Right. I mean, you could select all these keywords, but if you're not showing up on the first page of Amazon for that keyword, then you're obviously not benefiting from it. So, yeah. And how hard you got to work to do that, or how hard or when you should just refresh it. A lot of that also comes down to your competition. There are some terms where like my book has stayed number one in the keywords for like 5+ years, but I really don't have that much competition. So it doesn't take much. But then again, there's times where it's like, you can battle and you can work up to get to the top for that one, but so is everybody else.
Yeah.
And that's why like coming up with those long phrases that we just discussed in the beginning of this podcast can be really beneficial, because who would have thought Victorian second chance romance with baby?
Yeah. So
That's not what most of those romance writers are putting in. They're usually putting in like romance, something very broad and not very descriptive. And so
I remember one of your tips from many podcasts and blog posts of yours that you should always use, what do you call it? The anonymous browser and not logged in. And then, look at your keywords in Amazon and see if your books are coming up for them.
Yep.
And,
incognito mode.
Yeah. Incognito mode. That will do it too, huh? Yeah. That way you don't have to log out all the time.
Yep. And for our listeners, if you don't know how to do that, if you're using Chrome, just right click on the Chrome icon and then select incognito mode, and it will open up a browser where all of your data and cookies and all that are blocked, so that Amazon can't get any information from you, and instead just shows you raw information.
And if you're a geek like me, you hit Control-Shift-N and that opens a new incognito browser.
Yep.
So, okay. What was I going to say now? Now I disrupted myself. A9 algorithm, refreshing your keywords. Okay. So you just got to keep at it, keep refreshing your keywords. But audience exhaustion. If you're in a super small niche, have you noticed seasons? So what I do is I just stop my ads for a certain book for like a month and like kind of let the audience refresh. Is that a viable, plausible thing?
Yeah, that's I've heard that working for a couple of people. Another thing too is ask yourself, if the book itself needs to be refreshed. Mm-hmm. One of the things I did on my podcast was I have this thing called the Revive a Dead Book series.
Yeah.
And it's full of people who are, that they had a book, it was doing well, then the sales died, and then for some reason they decided, and they always talk about what that reason was, they decided to come back to it. And what steps did they take to revamp and rebreathe life into the book itself? Now, most of the time, this is where the book has been like dead for a year,
Yeah.
Not something like a month or a couple of weeks, but that it was like they moved on to write more books. And now they're looking back and they're saying, hey, if only this book, which I know is really good, if I gave it a real chance. And a lot of what these authors will show is that as they moved on to write more books, they learned a lot. They learned how to make better covers and better book descriptions and how to work Amazon ads better. And so they come back to that old book, which is still a good book, but this time they give it a cover that really fits its genre and is more in line with the target keywords and has a book description that, flows better. And once they've added these things, then they rebreathe life into it, like give it a spark, a jump start, by throwing some Amazon ads, changing up the keywords, sending, a couple of email blasts, doing some promotions. And next thing you know, it's like taking off like it's a new book again.
Yeah. I wanted to be on that podcast, but it didn't work. I think I wrote you an email about it. I had this book and the plan was I was going to put it in Barnes and Noble. And it didn't work. So, but a long time ago, when I started Amazon ads, I think 2016, that blew it way up to the top to #1 in its category again. But that was 2016. So maybe I'll have to revive it again and try to go on your podcast about that. But so I'm going to have to use a different method. Because remember in 2016, man, Amazon ads were just working for everything. They were so easy,
Yeah, there's a lot less competition at the time, but I'd still say it's an extremely viable method for marketing, because in this case, you just have to be a bit smarter about it. You can't just kind of go in there and throw in the common terms, and that's one of the things we've been working on in the program. We just did the update to Publisher Rocket, and we've added new features that are in line with some of the new things that Amazon's doing for ads. You know what's so awesome? You have now the print book section, so you can now research print books. So the tool is so unique. Man, thanks, Dave. I can't praise it enough, because it's exactly what I've been looking for, and there's no other tool that does it. This is a unique tool in the world. I'm glad you like it. Yeah, I'm a writer myself, and I've got a programming team, so I'm always trying to find ways to make my writer life easier. Definitely. So, okay, let's go on that one a little bit. I know you don't like talking, giving up your pen names and your keywords, etc.
And but so how many books do you have published? Are you publishing one a year, or what's your schedule look like?
It comes in and fits in, all of a sudden it's like I'll get a couple books and then not. I'm actually at 9 books now.
Okay.
And
Oh,
I'd
wait a minute.
say,
You're only at 9 books.
yeah, well, I mean, I've been doing this for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years.
But I think we got to tell the listeners that you make like massive bucks with each book, because that's the whole point of Publisher Rocket, is you don't waste time on books and experimentation like I do, publishing 20 books and only 2 get traction,
Yeah, no, every one of my books except for one's been semi failure, and that was my second book I ever wrote. But all of the others range from $1,500 to $3,000 a month.
Excellent.
And they have since they were made. And that's not like, none of those books was this giant, huge moneymaker. Like, oh man, I was rolling the dough. Yeah. But what it was that I knew that there was a constant request for this kind of book. Mm-hmm. People were constantly searching for it, and there was like 0 to no competitors out there. And I was like, well, if you write this book and you write it good and you really help people, like, it will sell, and it will sell for years to come. And so that was really my strategy.
Cool. Well, I don't want your pen name, but can I ask you, do you do genre hopping, or what genre are you in? Nonfiction?
Mainly nonfiction, although I've definitely done some science fiction. Nonfiction, though, for the most part, and it's been all over the place. Many a times it's been something where I'm very comfortable with writing. There was one case where it was in a subject that was amazing, but I was like, I wasn't comfortable writing it. So I actually teamed up with somebody who was a specialist, and we worked together, me helping them to understand, how to write engaging, fun and entertaining, but yet smart nonfiction books. And they were using their intelligence on and experience in that subject matter to create something beneficial.
Well, that's a great strategy if you get the people that you need,
Yeah. Like I said, though, it's like one of those where it's like, oh man, no, I got to write this book. This is awesome. And, but I was like, obviously I'm not the person. So it was a good time.
Well, yeah, but so what, the what do you call it? The advertising icon, Gary Halbert. That's what he did. He went, in the old days of direct response, he went to those big, huge lists and saw where the need was. And then he got the specialists to write the report, and sold PDFs for $40, and so I think $44 million is a good validation there,
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I think Seth Godin also did something similar. He said he started with book packaging, with exact same thing, looking where the need is and then getting the specialist to write the book with them and then packaging the book. So yeah, nothing wrong with that. So so you got 9 books now. I think that really speaks to me, because there's so many authors out there trying, and I'm a spaghetti at wall thrower, and with your tool you can just make the book that works and save you time. So yeah. So I've noticed over a year now, you've had a podcast for over a year, right?
Yes, although it's been on a break for the past couple of months, because when we were working with creating version 2.0 of Publisher Rocket, it really took up like a majority of my time to make sure that we did it right and we could push the fold, and we could add new features. And so yeah, so it's been on hold.
So when did you start your podcast, and why?
Well, a lot of it was that I wanted to make sure that we have a lot of like information on kindleprinter.com. Matter of fact, I will not hit publish until I believe that it is the best article on the subject. Yeah. But the problem is, a lot of people don't have time to sit down and read those articles, right? They don't have the ability to go through. So what I did was I created a podcast that would allow people to learn how to bookmark it while on the road. Now, what's really awesome about it is that even if I did pause it, or I never did another podcast episode again, that all those episodes are still very useful and viable. Yeah. Now, the way that we set it up was that I would start each episode with kind of the lesson. All right, here's the lesson. This is what you're going to learn. All right, let's talk about it. Okay, great. Now that you've heard about this lesson, I'm going to bring on an author who did what you just learned, and we're going to hear about it. We're going to learn through them. We're going to gain experience. And then at the end of it, I give a recap on everything we learned. So it's like, hey, do this tactic to figure out the best title. Let's talk to this author who did that tactic. And then we talk and we hear. And then finally, all right, here's the recap lessons learned. So, I mean, it really is like a audio lesson.
Yeah.
And one of the things I did too is I said to I tried to find a lot of authors that, weren't like, I didn't want to go for the typical every famous person or anything. Because like, for example, I'm good friends with Kevin J. Anderson, who wrote like a lot of the Dune books, after Frank Herbert died. He also did like Jedi Academy. Him and I have worked together, but it's like, to interview him about book marketing, the guy's an award winner, he has teams, he has publishing companies that pay an arm and a leg for anything he writes. So I try to go after like people who are in the ditches, like fighting, tooth and nail, that were like clawing out of it, so that they could show their struggle, and it's so fresh for them. And ultimately their story is the example of what the person just learned. So
yeah, cool. Yeah, what was his name? Because I was just talking to Brian Meeks, and he also had something to do with him. Wait a minute, Frank Herbert's the author of Dune. Who is this guy?
Yeah, Kevin J. Anderson.
And he's writing Star Wars, man. That sounds like some bread and butter right there.
Yeah, he's actually been to what's his name's ranch.
Cool.
George Lucas's ranch, but he calls it. It's not Star Wars Ranch, but it's something kind of ridiculous like that.
Tatooine or something out there in California. Yeah. So your podcasts are typically like around 20 minutes. Is there an SEO reason for that?
No, I think my thing is that like, it's just my personal preference. I have a hard time listening to long podcasts. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to create your own podcast, you might as well do it, at your preference. So it also forces me to be very succinct. So I have to actually spend a lot of time in preparing that lesson. And usually I'll try to shoot for 5 to 10 minutes on the lesson. And then I give our guest, a 10-minute mark. Like, you got 10 minutes to go through this to tell your story. And then I've got like 5 minutes or so to recap everything.
Cool. Yeah, because I'm, always hearing that long form content, even YouTube videos and is in again, but I haven't seen any actual data, some interesting. So, okay. So what's your number one tip for somebody who wants to start podcasting?
Well, I think specifically one needs to like look at what is the goal, right? What is the goal to your podcast? And make sure that you write that down. Like, for some people, for me, it was making sure that we were able to translate Kindlepreneur content into audio content that is succinct, right? Mm-hmm. I wanted to help teach people book marketing while they're on the go. So therefore, there were a lot of times where like, I could have easily stepped out of that and made it easier on myself and gone a different route, or there was some hot topic, that was out that was like, oh, that'd have been sweet, and that might have like pulled me off course. But so long as I remember that, no, every episode needs to be a lesson that teaches, then it kind of kept me creating, within a certain form. And at the same time, what really helped was that people came to understand the show's structure. And they almost welcomed it. I think one episode I did something different. I had like 2 or 3 emails from people immediately just saying, hey, why'd you do that? Don't do that. We're creatures of habit. So
yeah. But then you have to see if the people who are complaining are the 80 or the 20%,
Yep. That's true.
It's hard because you're actually blind to the other side of that data,
Absolutely.
So I'm a big Taleb fan, Nassim Taleb. I think everybody should read every book of his. Okay. So have you heard Google is indexing podcasts now?
That's what I've heard. Yep.
Have you dug deep into that yet? Any tips, or you just know about much as I do right now, huh?
It makes sense that they're starting to translate. I mean, it was a big thing for YouTube for them to start translating YouTube videos. Because let's face it, from an algorithm's perspective, it has no idea what's on that video, right? It can't watch it. So instead, what they started to work on was creating translation, closed captioning, and now they could take the words and kind of figure out what the video is probably about. So from a Google indexing purpose, it became very important. So it doesn't surprise me that they took that same technology and have started using it towards podcasts to help create a better understanding of the podcast, as well as a better way to serve people by helping people to find podcasts, since they are very popular.
Are you going to start trying to rank your podcast now, or a podcast episode?
Probably not. What we did do, though, is that I took the podcast episodes, because I do have podcast episode pages on Kindlepreneur, and you can go to the podcast section on the website and look. But I also found, like, if there's a certain podcast episode that really helps an article, I'll also put that podcast on that article. So it does a couple of things for Google SEO. Number one is that Google knows that there is a recording on this page. And I think that the algorithm is able to say, hey, what's a better page? One that's just words, or one that's got words, pictures, videos, audio recording, right? So I think that that's one factor. The second thing is that Google, there's also time on page. The more that people spend on that page, the more indication to Google that, hey, this must be good content, because they're not immediately leaving. Yeah. So if somebody stays on the page to listen to the podcast, that helps the metrics as well.
Yeah, what is that called? Dwell time or something?
Yep, something like that. Time on page is another one.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, so somebody asked me that actually, and I said, well, I've been looking, I'm a podcast junkie myself, and I've been looking at podcasts a lot for several years. And so I think it's really a good idea that you put like a full description, like a blog post in the description of your podcast, and that shows up on all of your podcast episodes everywhere. And I noticed a lot of people doing that with a bunch of hyperlinks and stuff, and it works for me anyways. Do you do that to your podcast descriptions too?
So I do, but the key is that I didn't do it so much for indexing purposes. I told my VA that we want to make sure that they're great notes, because again, it comes back to what I said was that this is for people on the go, which means most likely they're driving their car. They don't have a notebook. So they may hear some great stuff. I want them to be able to come back to that page, that post where the podcast is, and be able to read and be like, perfect, and either print that off or read over it or something like that. But, let's create the content under the episode to help people who just listen to the episode.
Yeah, makes sense. So I remember years ago when we interviewed, we really went down the road about blogging and SEO, and how you make a blog rank, and then you get your book. I'm totally glossing over this, of course, but so are you still blogging and then and getting traffic from your blog to your book?
I do, yes. Yep.
That's cool. That's
still a fun little tactic. It's one of those things where, because I'm always constantly sending traffic from Google, to the niche website and then to the book. Even if Amazon tries to lower the ranking a bit on my book, that I still am making sales, and probably more sales than the other guy. And so it pumps me right back up.
So do you have a blog for each book?
Just about, almost. Yep.
Cool. And so what's working really well in the SEO world now?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of things. I think just a lot of it is making sure that, that you really do write the best content. Now, that's not a cop out on your question there. I think it's just more important. I think, like, for example, back in the day, if you, you might do your keyword research and you'd find some juicy keyword that was best green running shoes. Yeah. And then you would find another one that was best red running shoes. And then what people would do is they'd go write an article all about best green running shoes. And then they'd write another article about best red running shoes. Yeah. Well, Google kind of got smart and said, nah, let's face it. It's really just best running shoes. And then the best running shoes article will be one that incorporates a little section on green and red and blue, so sometimes it's really best to come in and say, hey, I want to write this article that's truly all encompassing, that doesn't just kind of slightly talk about this and gloss over that. It actually goes in depth. And also, Google loves articles that are highways and not cul-de-sacs. And what I mean by that is that this article is like a great source of information. It's leading you on to other stuff. It's helping you to grow and, even maybe move to other articles on the subject on other websites. So that's why also linking out is a very good indication that you are a highway and not a cul-de-sac.
Yeah, dead end. Yeah, that's cool. So have you tried the infographic technique?
I really haven't. No, I've heard of a lot of people who do, and it's worked out really well for them. But the key is for me, especially from a marketing standpoint, is that I like to focus on like one particular tactic. Otherwise, I feel like I'll work really hard and I'll drop the ball. So what I mean by this is that, like SEO is my thing. So I really focus on that. And I've heard infographics are great, but it's just something I haven't spent the time to do and therefore not do legitimately.
Oh, I dig it because I'm into graphics and stuff. And so I was trying that a bit. And one of them not really took off, but started ranking. It is ranking now. So I'm going to be looking at that some more because it's just a technique that I can do,
Nice.
And, yeah, it is cool because for me, it's a high yield, low input, high yield, because I can get the graphic going pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then what is your most favorite way to get a blog or a new blog to rank quickly in the big Google?
Well, I would say it starts with selecting the right keywords.
Okay.
Making sure that you're not going at, especially if you're a new website, make sure that you're not going after something super competitive. I mean, you may write the best article, you may have done everything perfect, but your website never gets crawled by Google. It doesn't understand what it is. So therefore, you're going to have that severe disadvantage. And that's why it's very important not to go in there and say, I'm going to write an article on how to lose weight.
Oh,
good luck with that.
To the club.
Yeah. And maybe it is the greatest article ever, but it just doesn't work that way. So it really starts by doing great research, finding, niche articles and building those out until Google's had enough time to say, oh, wow, yeah, this is the website on such and such.
Do you have any resources or any blog posts in mind about that?
When it comes to SEO, not really. I mean, there's, Backlinko is a great website that helps people learn about it. Brian Deans, devotes a lot of his life to it.
Yeah, that's where I got the infographic technique from.
Nice. Yeah, he's really good. He also focuses on YouTube as well. That's a good source of information. I really love Authority Hackers. I think that they do a great job as well, especially if you're trying to build a website that makes money. They incorporate the whole affiliate side with SEO side and other advertisement things. And I think they're just an incredible source. And they really write. I mean, it's funny when you talk to SEOers, they know how to write a full-blown great piece of content because they have to if they want to rank.
Authority Hackers.
Yep.
Okay, I'll write that one down in the show notes. Cool. Yeah. Have you read George Gilder's new book, Life After Google?
No, I haven't. I've just finished a Google book, but it was called Work Rules by their human resources president.
This is a book, George Gilder is really interesting. He's about 80 years old, I think. And he was there, for example, when they coined Moore's Law, and so he goes and interviews all of these people. And anyways, very interesting book about the future of computing and internet and Google and the whole thing. So I highly recommend it. And anyway, so like I said, the first time we talked, we were very blog on SEO centric. So I think that's how you started, right? So do you consider yourself a blogger or an author or what?
That's really a good question. I mean, I guess I could also consider myself a CEO of a software company.
There you go.
Yeah, well, there's 19 people that work for me, so.
How about master of the internet?
No, not yet.
Yeah. I don't know who it was. It was Ramit Sethi. It was a Tim Ferriss podcast. And he went around and went to parties and just experimented, like telling people, I'm a writer, and then the next day he would say, I'm an author. And he said the best one above all, just shoulders above everybody else was the author, you know.
Yeah.
The author is kind of negative, actually, but so okay. So then, what got you started in writing?
Well, I was stationed in Korea, and my wife and I was trying to find a way to actually get out of the military and be able to be full-time, at home with my family. And the problem is that you can't do that with a brick and mortar or, some kind of like entrepreneur, shipping thing. So it was cool because as an author, you could write the book, put it up on Kindle Direct Publishing and, make money while you sleep and not have to be there to answer questions or to fulfill orders or things like that. So it's like the perfect situation.
Do you have tangential, of course, Kindle Select? Do you have an opinion on that?
There's a pro and a con to it. I actually have a podcast episode on that where I brought in people who were like super pro, Kindle Select, and others that were pro putting it on other markets. And I think that the best way to sum up that is that if you choose one, be sure and be prepared to actually, market it using the benefits of that. So a lot of people like poo-poo on the other markets like Barnes & Noble and iTunes. But what's funny is they'll put it on those markets and they'll do nothing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's the same as like just putting your book up on Amazon and walking away and then getting mad at Amazon. The truth is that if you really want to benefit from those other markets, you need to roll up your sleeves and do a little bit of work. Instead of just pushing people to drop reviews on Amazon, how about you have a couple of them drop reviews on Barnes & Noble? Yeah. And what's funny is that those 4 reviews on Barnes & Noble will go like 20 times further than 4 reviews on Amazon. Because there aren't that many reviews. So you really stick out a lot more with 4 than you would on Amazon. Doing things like that. Some people will do Facebook ads. Well, why not just do a Facebook ad that targets people who love Barnes & Noble and whatever your other targeting is, and then send them to your Barnes & Noble book. When you do those things, you'll actually see a lot more return, and then you're going to find some great things. But if you don't intend to do that, then give your book the best advantage it can on Amazon and just make it Kindle Select.
Yeah. So you brought it up, keyword Facebook ads. So we know you do Amazon ads, but do you do Facebook ads too? And what's better?
No, not really. I'm not a fan of Facebook ads because, I never made myself like a master of Facebook. Matter of fact, for my company, I hired some Facebook agency to come in and work that aspect. But with regards to Amazon ads, the reason why I love those most and more so than Facebook is that in Facebook, you have to convince somebody to leave one platform, stop looking at, their friends' lunch or, the cat videos or whatever, come on over to Amazon and decide right then and there that they not only want to buy a book, but that they want to buy your book. And that's like a lot. That's actually pretty ridiculous. Instead, though, with Amazon ads, you're getting your book in front of people who were already there on Amazon, who had already decided that they wanted to buy a book. They just needed to figure out which book. I tell you which one's easier, convincing somebody to do all those other things with Facebook or just to buy your book, which is Amazon ads.
Yeah. Less resistance. Well, you're going to the source too.
Yep.
Straight to the audience. Yeah, I love them too. So jumping around in the questions here, how do you get reviews?
Well, that can be from a lot of things. Number one is that, since I'm not using emails and I'm not doing, giant launch parties or anything because they're all on pen names, one of the ways that really helps me is that I make sure to ask for them in the book. And what I specifically do is I humanize myself. Don't sit there and say, hey, and if you like the book, please leave a review. Like, whatever. That's not going to convince anybody to stop what they're doing and go do a review.
Yeah.
The other thing, too, is don't assume that the reader understands how important a review is. Before you became an author, did you really care or really think that it was that important to leave a review? Probably not. So what I do is I'll have that page and I will say things like, hey, thank you so much. It means the world to me. It's been an honor to be able to sit and be able to write this for you. And hopefully, it's going to help and make a difference in whatever it is that you're trying to do, et cetera, et cetera. If you have the time, it would mean the world to me, and my writing and help me to learn more as well. If you could leave a review, I will read each one of them, thanks, et cetera. And the reason is that you're implying on how important it is that it will be used to benefit you and that it also lets them know that you will read it. Now, this does a couple of things. One, it gives importance, and it also makes it like you're expecting it, which means they'll kind of be letting you down. And third is that it reminds them that you're a human and you're going to read it. Let me tell you, if they got to the end of the book, they probably felt it was beneficial. Maybe at the least, it would be a 3, right? Because if they hate it, if it's a 2 or 1, they don't finish reading it.
Yeah.
So if it's a 3, okay, that humanization, you're going to remind them that they may hurt your feelings. And I'm not going to lie, that'll probably change that 3 to a 4 at least, right? And the 5 is going to be a 5, and the 4 may turn to a 5. The point though is that you're reminding them it's a human. It's kind of like people on. Have you ever read the comments on YouTube? I mean, ugh. Yeah. Most of the time it's horrible. But a lot of people just, yeah, exactly. But they just forget that is, that they're humans, that they're actually hurting people's feelings. So again, write that back aspect, think about it, humanize yourself, show its importance, and you'll see a lot more positive reviews coming.
I like that. I've never heard it put that way though. Humanize yourself. I am human. No. Any more tips on this humanizing thing?
No, I've heard people say that they do like a cute, funny little picture. I say that depends on your demographic. If you're writing serious information, definitely don't do a stupid cat picture. But like if you're writing to, a demographic of like 55-year-old women, heck yeah, put that cute little kitten picture in there, with the cute little kitten eyes looking up at them as you write that, that humanized aspect. You're probably going to get them to do something.
Do you recommend, do you have your picture about the author, your own profile pic in there?
No, but if I wasn't doing a,
I know I'm getting towards your genre there. Sorry.
No. But if I wasn't doing a pen name, or if I wasn't writing on very serious information or so, I probably would put a family picture if I got permission from my wife and the kids. No, because I mean a profile. It reminds them. It reminds them that, again, I have a family, and that the family is kind of depending on this. So again, it will help with that review.
That's cool. That's a great one. I haven't heard that one. Yeah. Okay. So you kind of already answered it, but do you launch your books or any launch hacks or anything?
I have, yeah. But a lot of times because of the websites, that I use the website as kind of the launch aspect. Okay. But I'll definitely do promotions, book promotions. I'll definitely use KU when necessary, and kind of do the free books and all the other benefits that come with it. Because hey, why not? And of course, I definitely have my Amazon ads to kind of continuously pump life into them so that they maintain relevancy through the years instead of through the days.
Yeah. Definitely. So I remember the first time I talked to you, I think I asked you, what would you do different if you could do it all over again? And you said, I would start building my email list sooner.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So how do you build your email list?
Well, the biggest thing for the email list is that you got to offer something that they want, that could be like, if you're a fiction author, do not offer them a short story that you wrote, some random short story. People don't care about your writing yet. They're not fans of you. They're a fan of the story. So give them something that is still a part of that story. Like write a short story prelude to the original story, or write an inside, side story or something. The key is that give them what they want, or else otherwise they ain't going to sign up. With nonfiction, think about what it is that would help with the information. Maybe you could create like a 30-minute mini course and have it be a free download. They just got to sign up for it. And the mini course gives them visuals of what you're talking about, or give them checklists, or give them extra case studies. The point though is don't just give them a random thing, or don't just say, hey, please join my list and I'll email you the next time I got a book. Like, boring.
Yeah, that's standard, huh?
I spend a lot of time in thinking about what it is I need to give people in order to convince them to give me another chance and to read another thing of mine.
Well, that's where I love your Kobayashi Maru technique, but I think that's only for fiction books, huh? Can you tell us about this?
Yeah, sure. So the Kobayashi Maru, there's a bit of the Star Trek lore to it, but the actual point to this is that I like I was saying, you could write a prelude short story, or you could write a side story or an inside story. And this is what I mean by the Kobayashi Maru. The inside story is that, say, for example, you got a character and there was something really big or really important, okay, that happened in their life. Now, it's okay to talk about what it is, but you don't need to have an entire chapter telling it, okay? Instead, you can make that be the short story. So here's an example. say you're in a romance, right? A romance book. And one of the characters is hesitant to date another guy. And she's hesitant because she had the most horrific experience with Mr. X, and all her friends refer to Mr. X, the night of Mr. X. Oh my gosh, the night of Mr. X, Oh yes, that's true. Yep. Oh, that was terrible. Now, as an author, you don't have to actually tell the story of the night of Mr. X. All you have to do is just make it infer that she had a really bad experience, and so move on, right? This is why she is the way she is. But what you can do is you could write the date with Mr. X and make that your short story that you offer as an email. I tell you that if the person read the rest of your book, they're going to want to know what happened to Mr. X. And they will definitely not only sign up for your email list, but they'll download the book and actually read it. And now you have that person who's read 2 of your stories. And if your writing is on par, you're really converting her into a fan.
Yeah. I love it. I'm incorporating it in one of my books. I haven't published it yet though, but I think I heard that in one of your podcasts. Oh yeah, thanks, Dave. So I can't wait to publish this next book and use that technique. And I'll let you know how it goes because it sounds
awesome.
Really,
sounds good.
Yeah. So I respect your time. How much time do you have left? I have a couple more questions.
I actually have to get going. Got to go pick up the kiddos.
All right, then how about one more question?
You got it.
Okay, let's see. I'm going through. Oh man, I got like 20 more. Let me see. Okay, what's on the horizon for you? What are your next projects?
Well, I am working on a comic book right now.
Oh.
I've always wanted to make a comic book. And at the same time too, we were writing an article. Like I want to write an article on how to make a comic book for Kindlepreneur. So we're putting together this comic book that's called The Writer's Life. And it's just kind of making jokes, sort of like a comic strip book really about what it's like to be a writer.
But that's graphic heavy. Who's doing the graphics?
Well, same guy had do the original graphics on Kindlepreneur. He's this artist out of Brazil. His name's Chao Prado. And so I'm just having him do it just because it's, he's been working with me technically for 4+ years. Okay.
All right. I respect your time. So where can we find you online?
You can find me at Kindlepreneur. That's like Kindle Entrepreneur, kindlepreneur.com.
Right on. Thanks, Dave. It's been real. Thanks again. And let's keep in touch.
You bet. And sounds good.
Okay. Okay, my friends, if you like that podcast, then remember to go to zbooks.co and go get all the materials to start your authoring career. We have a 7-day challenge every week, so there's no excuse to not finish your book. And remember, please go to iTunes and upvote this podcast and Google Play. Okay, I look forward to seeing you at the top.